Hey folks, welcome. Thanks for watching. I'm very glad to be here. And today we are going to talk about Devsecops. And Devsecops is, well, it's not just another hype word. Look at the basics. It's dev and ops, so developer and operations. And what we try to do with DevOps is we try to tear down walls. We try to make sure that we do not just create software and throw it over the wall and as a developer just say, hey, ops people, it's now your problem, but we try to combine that together in one team. So we are better, faster, and stronger and try to get and push out software into production even, well, basically faster, right? We try to deliver more. And then we got that SEC, that security part, and it's right there in the middle. And it's very important because security is, in most cases, is not a first-class citizen in both a developer's or an operations person's mind. I mean, we need to take care of this, and it's not something that needs to be in the end of every iteration. It needs to be part of the team. We need to make sure that if we develop stuff and we put it into production, that we are basically safe. So, first of all, I'm going to tell you something about me. I'm Brian. I'm a developer advocate for Snyk, and that means I write emails and do talks and do a lot of development as well. But I'm also working a lot for the community, like the virtual Java user group and my local Utrecht Java user group here in the Netherlands. But that's not important because we're talking about DevSecOps, right? And if we want to solve something with this new DevSecOps-y thing, what is actually the problem? Well, think about it. I mean, say a decade ago, I was working for a bank. And like with these older institutions, you'll see that they deliver, well, quite slowly. I mean, we deliver like 3 times a year. And if you fast forward to today, or say the last 2-3 years, we try to deliver better, and we try to deliver faster, right? And if you look at e-commerce, for instance, we might deliver not 3 times a year, but nowadays 3 times a day. So what we try to do is we try to speed this up. We try to make shorter, smaller iterations and push the features to production as soon as they are ready. Point is that, again, we're focusing on these features. We're trying to make these features complete and push it to production as soon as it works. And we see that in in many life cycles, we see that the security focus is not yet there. It's not part of the development process. So as we see in many situations that DevOps is something that we're trying to work on in some way, we see that the security department is still something separate. It's still siloed at the end. So that means that developers think of development, operations think about how we get this into production, or DevOps teams do it as in general, and then we've got security. So after an iteration of 3 weeks, for instance, as your sprint might be 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you see that the security people are more or less the gatekeepers. They basically say no. And the point is, with saying no because for good reason, for instance, we're causing tensions between developers and DevOps people and the security people on the other side. But in the end, we have to make sure that we all are on the same page, right? I mean, our customers and the people that use our software trust us. And we have to make sure that these customer data will not be compromised and be out in the open. You do not want to be that company that is the next main headliner in the newspaper, right? So think about it. Say this is your application. This is the binary you want to put into production. How much of that actual binary that you put into production, it doesn't matter what kind of ecosystem you are, but how much is actually the code you have written or your team has written? It's probably something like this. I mean, this is because we heavily depend on frameworks, on libraries, and these libraries depend on other libraries, depending on other libraries, and depending yet on other libraries. So, although we have things in place like code reviews or maybe even pair programming, that is just that small purple dot in the middle. The big yellow part is stuff we just pull in and in many cases blindly use. So if you trust or if you take care of your own code that much, how do you do that? How are you doing that with your dependencies? How are you doing that with the frameworks and the libraries you are depending on? Well, I've got an example over here. I mean, this was an application we used for a demo, and it was 19 lines of JavaScript code for a serverless environment. This 19 lines of code application, it was a serverless function, had 2 direct dependencies. As you know, dependencies depend on dependencies depending on other dependencies. So in total, we brought in not 2, but well, it's not that much. It's 19 dependencies in total. Although the million-dollar question, of course, is how many lines of code was that 19 lines of code and these 19 dependencies altogether did I put into production? It ended up to be just shy of 200,000 lines of code. So you see that not even 1% of this function was your code. And well, we can say, are you using that code? Yes or no. But the point is, we are careful about our own stuff. But we also need to be careful on the stuff we pull in, because it's just as much our stuff if we put it in production, right? You probably heard of this. It's a company in Atlanta called Equifax. And Equifax was a credit company, or still is a credit company based in Atlanta. Anyhow, I do not want to go into the company. I want to go into the breach that they had in 2017. They were using the Apache Struts library. And the Apache Struts library is a library within the Java ecosystem that does some, well, say path forwarding and routing. And the point is, if we go down the main line, we see that they were using it as a dependencies, and they had no clue that over time there was a vulnerability found and disclosed and even fixed, and there was a new version out. But if you don't know this and you're still using a certain library in a certain application that is outward facing, then you might be in trouble. And they were. Because in the end, it turned out that people came into their system, snooped around for, well, days, weeks, maybe even months, and over 143 million US consumers were compromised by the data they found in their systems. And just by using a dependency and heavily depending on it without updating it. They were just in the crossfires. If we look at security in general, and we ask people, this is a chart that we have from our state of open source security that we just compiled at Snyk, and we ask people like, who is responsible for security? Well, it's basically not just a one person's job, right? It is a split responsibility between the security team, between the operations team, but 81% of our respondents said that developers need to take their fair share. So, let's check it out. I'm gonna do some hacking. Say I have an application over here, and this application is an application which contains that vulnerable Apache Struts library. Well, I don't need to go into that application, I just have to make sure it runs. Well, it's starting up right now, and that's all fine. I will go to my terminal, and I will show you what the problem is. You will see my terminal over here, and you will see a content type, right? And this content type is this part. If you can guess what content type it is, 100 points, but it's probably a weird one for you because it's a faulty content type. With this faulty content type, if you put it into the right version, or well, the wrong version of Apache Struts, what happens is that you can utilize OGNL, which is the Object Graph Navigational Language, and the expression language within Apache Struts. With that expression language, we can interfere with the objects which are in memory already, or we can even create new objects. That's what we do here. We are creating a new process builder over here, and we give that new process, what we are building, we're giving it the bash. That bash we feed with an arbitrary command, and that's all because in this exceptional situation, we were able to utilize this, well, expression language. Okay, so if I do this right away, and I do it like this, so I just use that header I just showed you, and substitute the word command with the env command, and I will, well, basically shoot it on my Heroku application you just saw over here, right? If I do it like this, and I fire it up, you will see that that env variable of that end command is actually executed. on this Heroku application. Fun thing is that I now can see, for instance, what the Java home is, or what the Java options are, or whatever. And if I can call the env command, I can basically call anything like creating a file, deleting a file, etc., etc., etc. Keep this home file in mind. I need it a little bit later because I'm going to show you another hack. This was a Java hack, a Java vulnerability. Let's go to this one. This is an application and it's a to-do application. So what I can do over here, I can just insert to-dos like buy flowers for my wife, which is nice. It's nothing much. But it also has a very nice about page. You see, I am the best UX designer ever. This application is using the ST library, and the ST library is there to show you static content. Well, I know the ST library over here has a path traversal problem. I will not do this from my browser. No, I will again use my terminal. So, for instance, I will say curl and I will go to that about page, and you will see the HTML of that about page is here. Fair. Now we're going to do a path traversal. We're trying to break out of that public folder or even try to break out of the web app. Normally what we're trying to do is something like .. and we try to break out and go like back into the path. Well, as we know, this ST library is a real library, and this library declines .. It specifically blocks that .. and it redirects you back to the application, like you see the about link over here, and you see that it will give the title Goof to do, because the ST library is a real application or a real library. Well, it basically declines that .. So if we are a little bit smarter, we can do something like URL encoding. You see, if I do the %2e and I will copy paste it a million times, because if we do .. in the root, we will end up in the root anyway. So doing this, we will end up in the root of my application. And now it means that if I do that again and I, for instance, go to etc/-wd, then I can just look into these files. And we can say this is not that damaging, right? No, but this is the start of a journey. We can read, so we can read whatever is here. I can read what kind of packages you are if I go to your package.json or your package lock.json. I can see maybe what kind of passwords you have here if you have a properties file over here. So this is the start of a journey. It's not a very high severe one, but again, it's a problem. Okay, back to that Java application I just showed you. Let me just sign up for this one. And I will sign up with my email and I will use the password 126 because I work at a security company 123456, and that's very secure. Don't ever do this. So I can create a to-do, and I will do something like eat buy and do somewhere in 1970, and well, just give it a high priority because by then I probably are hungry. And what you see is that the pi sign is converted into the ASCII representation because it uses the label, goes to the native to ASCII function within Java and well, changes that sign into the ASCII code. We can also upload files over here, and we can upload zip files. Well, let me show you what a zip file can do, because if I show you this zip file, this is a weird one, right? It has a good.txt, and it has a second file called .. etc., etc., /app/jdk/bin /native to ASCII. What I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to unpack it and see if I can overwrite the native to ASCII in the JDK that is there on my Heroku machine. Let's try that. By going here, I choose the file, I upload that zip file, and by uploading it, I see that the good.txt is in the public folder I expect it to be. But what happened to the other one? Did it just swallow the exception, or did it actually come through? Well, of course, you're already guessing it, because I can do something like this. Let me just type it well, give it a due date again in 1970, and it doesn't matter what kind of priority you give it, because now that native to ASCII is overwritten by the text muhaha gotcha. That is because the library I'm using here to unzip doesn't take care of these ... slashes and just executes without checking. Getting back to my application, or getting back to my, what is the solution? The solution is three things: culture, process, and tooling. What culture is, we need to take care of each other's mindsets. As a developer, we need to think a bit like the security people, and we need to make sure that we are also in their pace. Because if we just do our own thing and at the end they will stop us, not good. But also, for instance, management. They just don't need to only push you on creating new features. They only need to give you also need to give you the time to work on the necessary depth you're creating, and of course security stuff. Then we have process. We do not want to create more process. We have to make sure that we just adapt the process a tiny little bit so that we can work with it. Because if I give you a bunch of new process that you need to make sure that you have before you can go to production, you will never do that. And then we have tooling. And then that is where my company, for instance, come in. And we say you need to make sure that you shift left as possible. Make sure that you are testing for vulnerabilities during your coding on your local machine by checking your dependencies, for instance, in the same way as you call your unit test. If you do that again when you're going to your branch, you will see that no new vulnerabilities will come into your master repository. Of course, within CI/CD, during your CI/CD pipeline, you still need to have that gatekeeper. In the end, automated or not, to make sure that when you go to production, you're not vulnerable. But when you are in production, you're still not done. Why not take a snapshot of that point in time and monitor it on a daily basis, for instance, and make sure that, because, vulnerabilities will be found over time, and you do not want that to be yours and having the same problem as I showed you before with that company, that crediting company, right? So make sure that you have this in every element of your software development lifecycle to check, to have that quick response, and to make sure that you are not vulnerable over time and catch it as soon as possible. I'm open for questions. You can use it for free, of course, and if you have any questions, please ping me on Twitter. Thank you so much.